Hi, I'm Wenjia. Nice meeting you in this webinar. I will begin this presentation. According to the food safety law, imported normal foods should have Chinese labels, either sticked or painted to the product surface. There are three applicable legislation regulating the contents of Chinese labels. You could also include English in the Chinese labels, but the contents in the two languages should have a one-to-one correspondence. Today, I will be guiding you through several key sections to help you stay informed and prepared for regulatory developments in China's food sector. Here's a quick overview of what we'll cover. We have three parts. In this part, the first part, we will glance over recent updates in China's food labeling regulations. What are the three regulations? The issuing agency, the issuing time, and the transition period. We also include the scope of the three regulations and main changes of the standards. So as we mentioned before, we will talk about the three regulations. What are the three regulations? Those are National Standard 7718-2025, National Standard 28050-2025, and Food Labeling Supervision and Management Measures. The first regulates basic requirements for the labeling of domestic and imported prepackaged foods of all categories. The second provides required nutrition information and claims for the domestic and imported prepackaged foods, excluding foods for special dietary uses. The third elaborated certain requirements like font size and the position for printed production date. China has announced a two-year transition period for the enforcement of the three regulations. The three regulations will enter into force on March 16th, 2027. We can catch the information such as the former standard version here on this slide. So we will look at the scope of these three important regulations and standards. For food labeling supervision and management measures, this measure applies to food and food additives, labeling and identification, and their supervision and management. Food labeling, according to these measures, refers to the presentation of information about the food and its producer or operator to consumers through text, symbols, numbers, graphics, and other descriptions on prepackaged food labels, instruction manuals, and containers or outer packaging of unpackaged food. The focus is on the management requirements for labeling, such as regulations on font type and size, the position of date markings, color, and other related requirements. So what should be noticed is that the three regulations, or actually the two regulations, have different definitions about food labeling. As you can see from this slide, for National Standard 7718, which is quite dominant among the three regulations and measures, this standard applies to prepackaged food labels intended for direct consumer sale and those not intended for direct consumer sale. This does not apply to the labeling of packages that provide protection to prepackaged foods during storage and transportation, nor does it apply to the labeling of foods in bulk and foods that are made and sold on the same spot. According to the National Standard 7718, food labeling refers to all text, graphics, symbols, and any other explanatory matter appearing on the food packaging. So let's have a look at the National Standard 28050. This standard applies to the nutrition labeling of prepackaged foods directly offered to consumers. Nutrition labeling refers to descriptions and explanations provided to consumers on prepackaged food labels regarding the nutritional information and characteristics of the food, including the nutrition information panel, nutrient claims, claims about nutrient functions, and any other supplementary information. Nutrition labeling constitutes an integral part of the prepackaged food label. We will have a look at the significant changes in the three regulations that have a considerable impact on the labeling of normal foods. We can see here regarding National Standards 7718. The label content should be easily identified. The mandatory declarations on prepackaged food labels must be displayed on the outer packaging of the smallest sales unit. The production date and the expiration date should be specifically labeled on a separate region of the principal display section. If the separate area is not located on the principal display panel of the package, the word C specified part of packaging must be printed on that principal display panel to direct consumers to the exact place where the date is given. National Standard 7718 add part about the declaration of allergens on the label of prepackaged food, and this is mandatory if the food contains 8 allergens, as you can see from the picture. So for National Standard 28050, the updated version adds mandatory nutrients to be declared from 1+4 to 1+6. The 7 nutrients are energy, protein, fat, saturated fat, or saturated fatty acids, carbohydrates, sugar, and sodium. The updated National Standard 28050 also adds mandatory reminder about salt, oil, and sugar and required a sentence below the declared nutrients. Children and teenagers should avoid overconsumption of salt, oil, and sugar. In part 2, we will focus on requirements for imported normal food labels in China. We provide a legitimate label sample and elaborate on the mandatory items one by one. So if you are wondering about what kind of information should be included in the Chinese label, pay attention on this part. We will talk a lot about the articles from the 3 regulations.
Sorry for interruption. I need to adjust the video screen. Okay.
As we mentioned before, we will talk a lot about the articles from the 3 regulations. Basically, those articles are showing on the slides. I will guide you through those requirements in detail. Here I listed one legitimate sample label of imported normal foods. The language is in Chinese. The sample should include essential information such as product name, ingredients, storage conditions, net weight, country of origin, the name, address, and contact information of its importer or agent, and the China's registration number or the registration number issued by authorities of the foreign countries for the overseas manufacturers, production date and expiration date, and nutrition information. Those are mandatory items on the labeling of normal foods regulated by the updated 3 regulations. Those are all mandatory. So we come to have a look at the product names. I list it as the first mandatory item because this is quite important. Your product needs to have a product name. The principle which should be based on is that the product name should reflect the true attribute of foods. The true attribute name of the foods should be marked in a conspicuous position on the food label. The attribute names refer to special names that can reflect the inherent characteristics of the food itself that do not need to be explained or have been explained, including descriptions of one or more food-specific characteristics such as food or ingredient characteristics, process characteristics, food categories, etc. Names from company standard or association standard should not be the basis on product attribute name. The coined, fanciful, transliterated, dialect, or trademark name of the food can be marked on the same display side of the attribute name at the same time. When such name contains characters or words that may mislead or confuse consumers about the food attribute, such characters or words shall be marked in font not taller than the attribute name, and in the same font style and color of the attribute name at the same display side near to the attribute name. So now we have a product name. We will have to have a list of ingredients on the food labels. Those ingredients should be labeled, such as a single component ingredient and edible substances functioning as other packaging materials. Some ingredients should not be labeled, such as processing aids, deactivated enzymes, evaporated ingredients, removed ingredients, and food additive excipients that do not play a functioning role in final products. So, what could be the list of ingredients and what should be included in a list of ingredients? Let's have a look at those articles. A list of ingredients shall be declared on the label of prepackaged foods, including single ingredient foods. The ingredient list should be marked with guiding words. All ingredients shall be listed in descending order of ingoing volume in terms of weight at the time of the manufacturing or processing of the food. Those ingredients with ingoing volume of less than 2% are not required to be listed in descending order. Ingredients volatilized or removed during processing do not need to be declared in the list of ingredients. For imported prepackaged foods, every item listed in the foreign language ingredient list must have a corresponding entry in the Chinese ingredient list. Any ingredient present in the food that is not declared in the foreign language list but is required to be declared under Chinese laws, regulations, and standards must also be included in the Chinese ingredient list. If the ingredient is compounded, what could be the requirements? This article refers to compound ingredients. Compound ingredients. The name of the compound ingredients shall be declared in the list of ingredients, which is immediately accompanied by a list in brackets or of its original ingredients. Where national, industry, or local standard exists for a compound ingredient and the ingoing volume of the compound ingredient constitutes less than 25% of the food weight, the original ingredient of the compound ingredient does not need to be declared. Compound ingredients added to compound ingredients do not need to be expanded to indicate their original ingredients. If the ingredient is food additives, how could we label the names? Well, the following article explains these types of situation. For GB2760 and GB14880, these are other two national safety standards. The former one refers to food additives, and the second one refers to nutrition fortifiers. Food additives shall be declared using their common names provided in the National Standards 2760, National Standard 14880. Public announcements from Health Administrative Department of the State Council or National Food Safety Standards. Compound food additives should be listed with all food additives that play a role in the final product. Processing aids and deactivated enzyme preparations need not be declared. Food additives contained in compound ingredients that already have national standards, industry standards, or local standards, and whose addition amount is less than 25% of the total food content, if they comply with the carryover principles stipulated in National Standard 2760 that can be carried to foods through food ingredients, need not be declared. Auxiliary materials of food additives that do not play a functional role in the final product do not need to be labeled. We have looked at the product names and list of ingredients. What about the other mandatory items? Regarding the declaration of storage conditions, is there any examples? The answer is yes. We will look at the following articles. Declaration of storage conditions should be titled using storage conditions, conditions for storage, storage methods in the labels, or no title is indicated. Storage conditions may be declared as follows: stored at room temperature or frozen, or avoiding light or other conditions, stored at certain degrees, avoiding direct sunlight. Please store in a cool and dry place, and stored at room temperature, refrigerate after the package is open, temperature, moisture, and like that. So for country of origin, we have something that should be paid attention on. The imported prepackaged foods shall declare the country region of origin. If the product is completely obtained in one country origin, the country region is the country of origin of the product. When foods undergo processing in two or more countries, the country region where the nature of food changes complete shall be considered as the country of origin. If the country or region of filling or sub-packaging is different from the country of origin, the country or region of filling or sub-packaging should be marked at the same time. The source or the producing country of its raw materials or ingredients may be declared at the same time. For the name, address, and contact information of its importer or agent, we also have a part about this information on the question part in the third part of this presentation. Date marking for imported prepackaged foods without date of manufacture on its original packaging. The date of manufacture shall be calculated and marked based on the shelf life, the best before date, and other relevant information labeled on the original packaging. If the shelf life is 6 months or more, shelf life and shelf life expiration date may be marked. The format for the production date and the expiration date should be year, month, and day. Foods with a shelf life longer than 6 months or foods with a surface area of no more than 20 square centimeters could only label shelf life and shelf life expiration date. Declaration of allergens. The following food ingredients may cause allergy to some people. If such ingredients are used, they shall be declared in the list of ingredients, or warning contents shall be declared close to the list of ingredients on the labels. So those are 8 allergens. When the food contains those allergens, you should make declarations on the labels. When the allergic substances are used as ingredients, one of the 3 following declarations shall be used for the warning of allergens, as we mentioned before. The first way is to underline allergens in the ingredient list. The second way is to use bold characters for the allergens. The third way is to use the word contains. Certain foods are exempted from the declaration of allergens. For detailed articles, please refer to National Standard 7718. As a very important part of the mandatory information on labels, we will look at the nutrition information panel. The template of the nutrition information panel is shown here. Only mandatory information is labeled, so if you want to label more nutritional components, you should pay attention on the sequence on which the to-be-added components should be listed. You also could make nutritional claims on certain nutritional components if the amount of those reach certain values. Bear in mind that there are certain rules for the rounding interval and the boundary value of 0. You could obtain the nutrient reference value percent by dividing the value in the second column with the nutrient reference value. For those that do not have the nutrient reference value, you could use a horizontal bar in the nutrient reference value percentage part. If you use food fortifiers in the formulations, you should label the content of the fortifier and the corresponding nutrient reference value percent. We could elaborate how to label a nutrition information panel through another webinar if you are curious about it. For target population, serving size, and preparation instructions, any information on the original labeling of imported prepackaged foods, including details of the target population, serving size, and preparation instructions, must be provided in Chinese and comply with China's national food safety standards and any notices issued by the relevant state council departments. In this slide, I make a summary of requirements on font sizes. SAMR also released the food labeling supervision and management measures to regulate the font sizes. For font sizes of mandatory information, including nutrition information panel, for prepackaged food labels, the mandatory info got be in text, symbols, or numbers that are at least 1.8 millimeters tall, and the height to width ratio shouldn't go over 3. If the packaging's biggest surface area is over 150 square centimeters, the text, symbols, or numbers, except for the nutrition facts, needs to be at least 2.0 millimeters tall. If it's over 400 square centimeters, they got be at least 2.5 millimeters tall. Font sizes for the production date and the expiration date. The font height of the production date and the expiration date should be no less than 3.0 millimeters. However, for prepackaged food with a maximum surface area of less than 35 square centimeters, the font height of the production date and the expiration date should be no less than 2.0 millimeters. For the font sizes of labeled net content part, you should follow the following regulations shown as below. We can see the minimum font height depends on the volume and weight of your sample. After we dive into the mandatory items on normal food labels, we move on to the next part. In part 3, we will discuss some questions and answers on normal food labeling in China. Those questions and answers are downloaded from the official website. The first one is about labeling of strains in foods. For microbial strains directly added during production that have not undergone inactivation or removal processes, the specific name of the added strain must be indicated. The corresponding strain number and microbial content may also be displayed simultaneously. For strains used in ordinary foods, the specific strain name shall be labeled in accordance with the list of markable strains permitted for use in foods issued by the National Health Commission. For strains used in infant foods, the specific strain name shall be labeled in accordance with the list of markable strains permitted for use in infant foods issued by the National Health Commission. It is recommended to express microbial content in the following formats. For microbial strains directly added during production that have not undergone inactivation or removal processes, if they serve a fermenting function in the food, either the specific name of the added strain may be labeled, or they may be collectively labeled as fermenting microorganisms or microbial fermentation agents. For microbial strains directly added during production that have been inactivated or removed via filtration or other means, labeling is not required. If labeling is provided, the sterilization process shall be clearly indicated adjacent to the food product name or in the ingredient list, or terms such as inactivated, non-viable, heat treatment, or sterilized shall be used to clearly indicate that the microorganisms are no longer viable. Where laws, regulations, or national food safety standards stipulate otherwise, those provisions shall prevail. When using microbial preparations for food processing, only the name of the microbial strain needs to be labeled. Other ingredients within the microbial preparation are not required to be listed. The second question is about situations in which the word free does not contain or their synonyms are not permitted. Food additives and food contaminants, substances whose addition to the food is prohibited by laws, regulations, standards, including official announcements. Substances that should not be present in the food at all. The third question is about use of images on food labels. Images on food labels include actual photographs, illustrations, design drawings, and any other pictorial representations related to food ingredients or components. When the food generally contains a particular ingredient or component, an actual photograph may be used to depict taste, flavor, source of the ingredient attribute. If only food-grade flavorings or flavor substances are used to imitate the taste of an ingredient or food, an image other than an actual photograph of that ingredient or food must be used, and the word image showing for flavor reference only or similar must be prominently displayed adjacent to the image. When images generated by artificial intelligence or other technical means cannot be distinguished from actual photographs, they must be managed as if they were actual photographs. Images used to illustrate texture, flavor, taste, aroma, source of ingredients, usage instructions, or intended use are not regarded as special emphasis and therefore do not require quantitative labeling. The fifth question is about indicating the production date on imported prepackaged food, of which original label carries only the shelf life and best before date. The production date must be calculated by working backwards from the stated shelf life and best before date, using the day of the best before date as the starting point, and then showing by over-labeling, supplementary printing, or other equivalent means. The sixth question is about indication of importer or agent on imported foods. Imported prepackaged food must show the name, address, and contact details of either the importer or the agent, depending on which entity actually bears the legal responsibility for food safety in China. When the importer is the responsible party, the term importer shall be used as the introductory word. When the agent is the responsible party, the term agent shall be used instead. The product must also display the registration number assigned to the overseas manufacturing establishment by the Chinese authorities or the registration number issued by the competent authority of the country region of origin. The name and address of the overseas manufacturer and the name and address of the foreign operator are not required to be stated. The seventh question is about polyols and their energy conversion factors. This is about the design of nutrition information panel. So we will have a look at it and glance over. Polyols are carbohydrate derivatives in which the carboxyl groups have been replaced by hydroxyl groups. They are still considered as carbohydrates. If the name and quantity of a polyol are declared on a food label, the polyol may be included in the energy calculation. When polyols are counted towards the energy value, the energy they contribute must be subtracted from the energy otherwise calculated for total carbohydrates. This is also the question about the design of nutrition information panel and is about the zero threshold for nutrient declarations. Zero threshold, when the energy or a nutrient is present below this value, it has no practical nutritional significance that must therefore be declared as zero. When nutrients are declared proportion, the zero threshold still applies on the basis of 100 gram or 100 milliliters. The ninth question is about how to declare NRV percent when it is less than 1%. If the nutrient content is smaller than the zero threshold in Table 1, both the content and the NRV percent must be declared as 0 and 0% respectively. If the nutrient content is above the zero threshold, but the calculated NRV percent is smaller than 1%, round the NRV percent according to the rounding rules and declare either 0% or 1%. So in this part, we have collected some questions and provide answers. The first question is about, is there a minimal shelf life required on probiotic solid beverages for China? Actually, there is not. However, regarding probiotics, you should declare the status of strains on your product labels, whether those are viable or deactivated, and labeling of microbial content is required for products with the addition of lactic acid bacteria if those are not inactivated. The viable count of lactic acid bacteria should be no less than 10 to the power of 6 CFU per gram or milliliter. The second question, can manufacturing date be substituted by lot number on spurt bottles with new legislation? In Article 10.2 of National Standard 7718-2025, on the premise that the batch number is marked wine and liqueurs with alcohol content of 10% or more, do not need to mark the date of manufacture. So those are the answers. If you have more questions, you could send us through the following link and we will provide answers as soon as possible.
Okay, first, a big thanks to Wenjia for her sharing today, and also for those who might not very familiar with our services. Here's an overview of how we support prepackaged food entering China. So we review product formulas and the Chinese labels to ensure full compliance, and we also provide regulatory consultation for China market access. also about the GACC Overseas Manufacturer Registration for imported foods. And in addition, we share practical case studies on our website explaining why certain foods are denied entry, along with compliance tips based on our hands-on experience. So if you are interested, you can search this news. And beyond prepackaged foods, we also provide a full range of food compliance, both in China and globally. For example, new food ingredient application in China and also NDI notification and also application for novel food in EU. So whether you are expanding into one market or managing multiple country compliance, we help streamline the process and ensure your products meet all regulatory expectations. Okay, so that's all for today's topic, and thank you so much for attending. And we hope the insights shared will be valuable for your work and help you navigate the Chinese market smoothly. And if you have any questions or would like to discuss further, feel free to reach out to us via the email or just through the LinkedIn anytime. And also, before you go, we'd really appreciate if you could take a moment to help us complete the webinar survey. Your feedback helps us improve the future sessions. Okay, so thank you again and see you next time. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.